President Tsai Ing-wen gives one last press conference in LA before heading home to Taiwan. The EU's chief says using force in the Taiwan Strait is unacceptable during a visit to Beijing. Pirates attack a Taiwan container ship near Manila. Plus, statistics show credit card fraud in Taiwan is rising. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Erika Liu. President Tsai Ing-wen is heading back to Taiwan after a trip to the Americas. In a final press conference, she defended her foreign policy record and criticized her predecessor's recent remarks on China. Jean Van Trieste has this report.
President Tsai Ing-wen greets the press in Los Angeles as she prepares to head home. It's been an eventful 10 days. She's visited diplomatic allies in Guatemala and Belize, and she's met with U.S. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy in California, a historic first for Taiwan's leader. Now she wraps up her latest overseas trip by fielding questions from reporters. She summed up the trip's significance.
是不是突破？这是不同人有不同的解读了哈。但我来看哦，总统过境都行之有年。那在过境的时候，我们跟朋友之间也会有做一些交流哈。
And defended her foreign policy.
就是以一个总统对台湾的最佳利益考量来行塑的一个政策啊。那我也希望未来的总统，不论是哪一党的总统，都能够延续这样的一个决策的模式。
But it's China that drew some reporters' interest. Beijing has lured most of Taiwan's former allies in the region into switching recognition, including Honduras, which did so just days before Tsai set off. Tsai's predecessor, Ma Ying-jeou, is also returning from a much-publicized trip to China, the first by a former or serving Taiwanese president. During his trip, he said both Beijing and Taipei belong to one China. Taiwan's official name is the Republic of China, and it once laid claim to the Chinese mainland. Tsai said that's now old-fashioned thinking.
现在已经是2023年了哈，他这个论述应该是在1970年代所的论述了哈，所以这个讲法是有跟现在的环境是有一些差距了哈。那但是我们以现在的情境来看，这有一个非常清楚的事实哈，也就是说中华民国跟中华人民共和国互不隶属。
But Ma's party, the Kuomintang, disagrees. A party spokesperson says Ma's trip has made Taiwan's voice heard in China and shows that it's possible to hold peaceful exchanges while upholding Taiwan's dignity. These two different visions of China policy will be on the ballot next year as Taiwan goes to the polls to choose its next president. Due to term limits, Tsai won't be running again, making it unclear how her legacy will be carried forward. Leon Lien and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
China has sanctioned Taiwan's de facto ambassador to the United States. Beijing accuses Xiao Bikim of, quote, colluding with the U.S. to seek Taiwan independence. The sanctions mean that Xiao is barred from entering Chinese territory, including Hong Kong and Macau. Any businesses with ties to her are also forbidden from cooperating in China. This is the second time Xiao has been sanctioned by the Chinese government. Xiao seemed unfazed by the news, posting on Twitter, "Wow, the PRC just sanctioned me again for the second time." China's foreign ministry also announced steps against the Hudson Institute and the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library. Both hosted President Tsai Ing-wen during her stops in the U.S. To find out more about the implications of China's recently announced sanctions, Harrell Hughes spoke to Roger Huang, senior lecturer at Macquarie University in Sydney, Australia.
So in the past 24 hours, China's foreign ministry has announced a number of sanctions against institutions and people who met Tsai during her transit through the U.S. And this includes the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library and the Hudson Institute. So what is the broader implication of these sanctions?
So the main key here, I think, is that these sanctions, their main point is coercion, right? It is trying to create this idea of fear that anyone who associates with the Taiwanese and also any or work on agendas that is diverged from the Chinese perspective could be a legitimate target of these type of coercive sanctions, which could then also extend to people affiliated, even nominally associated with these individuals or organizations.
Would you say that these are generally symbolic?
So on the one hand, it's mostly symbolic, right? So these targeted individual and organization sanctions are meant to create a sense of fear. What is more interesting is the actual sanctions that China usually practices, which is the economic diplomatic sanctions that has, Taiwan is obviously very familiar with this, with the pineapples and the fish, etc. But China has almost, I wouldn't say perfected, but have chosen this as a very convenient economic tool that has regularly used not only just against Taiwan.
Is this the sort of response we would expected from China from this visit?
So, of course, a lot of things are happening, right? These sanctions are probably the least they could do, right? So it's largely symbolic. Most of these individuals and organizations probably do not own assets or will not be visiting in Chinese-controlled territories. Of course, there are real ramifications. Now, there are other things that we should be concerned about, right? Of course, there was the Shandong aircraft carrier that was, had a first kind of military live exercise in the Western Pacific, right, into the east coast of Taiwan. Now, also, for me, what's more worrying is the local provincial authorities of Fujian declaring basically that would potentially board Taiwanese ships and vessels across the Taiwan Strait.
That was Roger Huang, senior lecturer at Macquarie University in Sydney, Australia, speaking with TaiwanPlus reporter Harrell Hughes. Taiwan's former President Ma Ying-jeou has returned to Taiwan after his trip to China. Ma spoke to the media on Friday after arriving at Taoyuan Airport. He talked about the enthusiasm of the students he brought as part of his delegation. Ma called for more exchanges between young people in Taiwan and China. The former president also highlighted the importance of the 1992 consensus. This refers to an unwritten agreement between his party, the opposition Kuomintang, and China. Under it, both sides agree there is one China, but they can disagree about which China this refers to.
媒体评论所说的9·2共识又活过来了。我用实际行动证明，坚持9·2共识，求同存异，彼此尊重。 和大陆就可以有共同的政治基础，可以尽速恢复交流与对话。
Ma's China trip was not the first time the phrase 1992 consensus was brought up. It's actually been around for years and is a source of conflict between Taiwan's two major parties. TaiwanPlus reporter Jeremy Olivier explains why.
Former President Ma Ying-jeou's March visit to China, a first for any past or current leader of Taiwan. It's a trip made possible by something called the 1992 Consensus, a deeply controversial idea in Taiwan. Some say it's not even a consensus. And when asked if they could explain it, here's what people in Taipei had to say.
9·2共识就是一个中国两个不同的也不叫政府啊，两个地区吧。 对，然后大家都承认是一个中国了。
我只知道它跟一个中国不太是完全一模一样的概念，有一点像是类似模糊在一个中国界限之间的东西。
其实我也没有到非常的了解，但觉得其实台湾如果是自己一个独立的国家的话，或许还不错。
So how could such a fragile concept make it possible for a former president of Taiwan to visit China as tensions between the countries reach a peak? Here's how it works. The term refers to an unwritten agreement between the opposition Kuomintang, or KMT, and the Chinese Communist Party. Under it, both sides agree that there is one China, which includes Taiwan. But they're free to interpret that as they want. For the KMT, that's the Republic of China, Taiwan's official name. But for the CCP, it means the People's Republic of China. Basically, the two sides agree to disagree. But how did this idea come about? To answer that, we'll need to go back a bit. For much of the 20th century, the governments in Taiwan and China had no official contact with each other. That changed in the late 1980s, when Taiwan began shifting to a democracy. By the early 1990s, the two sides agreed to hold a series of talks to begin normalizing relations. But for those meetings to happen, they had to agree on Taiwan's status, and to avoid any awkward situations. That's how they arrived at the One China Different Interpretations formula. It wasn't until years later that a KMT official gave it the name 1992 Consensus. The KMT says those exchanges have laid the foundation for cross-strait relations for the past 3 decades. It says the 1992 Consensus gives Taiwan the room to deal with China without making either side uncomfortable.
Today, we continue to prove that it is useful and it's also a guardrail to slow down, to ease the cross-strait conflict, cross-strait tensions. So I think this is very important for the regional stability and peaceful environment.
But the ruling Democratic Progressive Party, or DPP, disagrees. It says the term is simply another way of accepting Beijing's stance that Taiwan is a part of the People's Republic of China. The DPP has refused to adopt it in its approach to cross-strait relations, something that has angered China.
If Taiwan admits or readmits the 1992 Consensus or the One China principle again, then it will be highly misleading to the world that Taiwan wants to be part of China. So that has a severe consequence.
Supporting the DPP's argument is China, which has made it clear that it was never on board with the KMT's different interpretations idea. For Beijing, the 1992 Consensus is no different than any of the other phrases it uses to lay claim to Taiwan.
要贯彻新时代党解决台湾问题的总体方略，坚持一个中国原则和9·2共识。
Even some in the KMT are ready to let the term go, especially after losing popularity from being seen as too pro-China. Legislator Johnny Chiang tried to retire it during his brief stint as party chair in 2020. Current chair Eric Chu has called it a no-consensus consensus.
But strong supporters of the concept, like Ma, continue to hold considerable power within the party, which means that as long as the KMT is a force in Taiwanese politics, the phrase 1992 Consensus will likely be around for the foreseeable future. Damon Lin and Jeremy Olivier for TaiwanPlus.
The President of the European Commission has said the use of force in the Taiwan Strait is unacceptable. She made the comments while on a visit to China with French President Emmanuel Macron. James Chater reports.
Words of welcome from Chinese President Xi Jinping to Presidents Macron of France and von der Leyen of the European Commission.
Thanking you for hosting us here in Beijing.
The two are the latest European leaders to visit China for talks. Top of their agenda, asking Xi to wield his influence over Russian President Vladimir Putin to end the war in Ukraine, now into its second year. China last month unveiled a peace plan for the conflict, but Xi was criticized for not speaking with Ukraine's leaders. After their meeting, von der Leyen said the Chinese president was willing to cool his Ukrainian counterpart.
We also count on China not to provide any military equipment directly or indirectly to Russia.
Von der Leyen said they also spoke to Xi about Taiwan, which China claims is part of its territory. Peace in the Taiwan Strait, she said, was of, quote, paramount importance.
The threat to, or the use of force to change the status quo is unacceptable.
The EU leaders' visit comes as concerns over China mount in the bloc, especially over deepening economic dependencies on Beijing. In recent years, the EU's goods trade deficit with China has widened from 145 billion euros in 2016 to 396 billion euros in 2022, around $432 billion US. But greater European vigilance toward China has prompted concern in Beijing, which fears the US is exacerbating EU skepticism toward the country.
支持欧洲实现战略自主，坚持中欧关系不针对、不依附、也不受制于第三方。
French President Macron said Europe didn't want to decouple completely from China's economy.
Ce n'est pas une approche anti-chinoise, c'est une approche pro-européenne. Et je pense que nous, Européens, on veut faire du commerce avec vous en respectant le fait que le président de la Chine a d'abord des déterminants pro-chinois.
The EU is counting on Xi to help end Europe's bloodiest conflict since World War II. But the bloc's concern over drawing any closer to China may mean their requests go unheeded. Alex Chen and James Chater for TaiwanPlus.
Coming up, a new competition in Taiwan celebrates the art of custom-made motorcycles. Stay tuned for more.
Thank you for watching Taiwan Plus. For more stories from Taiwan and around the world, please download the Taiwan Plus app.
Welcome back. You're watching Taiwan Plus News. A Taiwanese container ship was attacked by pirates near the Port of Manila. The attackers boarded the Panama-flagged Ever Boomi as it was waiting to enter the port early on Wednesday. An Indonesian crew member was bound and beaten. He managed to escape and warned the captain, who notified the Philippine Coast Guard. Authorities managed to drive the pirates away, and there was no serious injuries among the crew. The container ship belongs to Taipei-based Evergreen Marine Corporation. Taiwan has passed an amendment to its Electricity Act, which now includes harsher penalties for damaging national infrastructure.
以专条方式明定特别罚则，共计修正22部法律。这对国家关键基础设施等重要设施的实体破坏及虚拟侵害等行为加重刑责，以其能达到吓阻不法的效果。
Under the new regulations, those who damage electronic infrastructure could face up to 7 years prison time and a fine of over $160,000 US. But if damages result in any deaths, the penalty could be raised to life imprisonment. The amendment comes after commercial boats operating close to the Matsu Islands cut undersea internet cables. The updated law will also cover other infrastructure, such as airports and public transportation. Electronic fraud and online scams are on the rise in Taiwan. Banks say fraudsters tried stealing nearly $74 million last year, more than in 2021. Stash Butler has this report.
Online scams and card fraud are major problems around the world. Here in Taiwan, you don't have to go far to find people who've been victims.
那一段期间刚好没有出国，然后但是是盗刷是国外的金额，所以就是就赶快觉得就不对劲这样子。
我是接到通知说你的卡已经锁住了，然后问他说因为你有刷游戏点数，应该是盗刷吧，我就说对。
Now, figures show that online fraudsters are working to steal more money than before. The value of attempted payment fraud in Taiwan ballooned from 2014 till 2019, when it dropped sharply. But since 2020, it's been back on the rise, hitting about $74 million US last year. Police say fraud often comes through phishing scams and website data leaks. They've made a list of high-risk sites. It includes Singaporean e-commerce platform Shopee and Taiwan's books.com.tw.
有一些电商平台可能个资外泄情形比较严重，刚好有在这些网站高风险卖场网站上购物的时候，那你就有比较大的几率会接到这样的诈骗电话跟诈骗的情形。
Analysts at the Nielsen report say card fraud will cost the world $400 billion US over the next 10 years. But even though the overall value of fraud is rising, that's because electronic and virtual payments are becoming far more common around the world. Fraud is also still just a tiny fraction of global payments, and that fraction is shrinking as banks in Taiwan and abroad are working to get more secure.
以前可能要达到比较高的金额才有事后的通知持卡人，那现在我们也把这个门槛降为3000元。
The world is seeing a huge rise in electronic payments as people move away from cash to card and start shopping more online. Now, fraudsters are finding more and more inventive ways of getting their hands on some of that growing flow of money, but stay alert for fraudsters and keep away from dodgy-looking sites, and analysts say your money is safer than ever. Alex Chen, Stash Butler for TaiwanPlus.
Heavy metal music and Buddhism may seem like an unlikely match, but this combination has become the signature sound for one Taiwanese band. Yvonne Young has the story.
Buddhism is one of Taiwan's most widely practiced religions, with over 12,000 temples across the country. Most Taiwanese people know how to recite a sutra or two, but they've probably never heard of one quite like this. This is Dharma. It was formed in 2018 by drummer and band leader Jack Dong. He's a devout Buddhist and has been a part of Taiwan's metal music scene for decades.
之前以前有淘 record 在台湾那时候还有的时候，然后我买了一张很奇怪的 CD， 我以为它放在 New Age， 然后我找了一个 CD， 它是藏传佛教的音乐，那它就是用那种狮子吼的方式，对，我想哇，这是 metal 哎。
Those albums inspired him to create this band.
大概2018年的时候，然后我找了我另外一个团，也是我的好朋友，也是我们现在的团员叫 Andy。然后他开始，我就跟他有这想法，我们就开始写出了第一首《七佛灭罪真言》，后来开始了这个旅程。
The band's frontman is Joe Henley, a Canadian writer based in Taiwan. He's a Christian by birth and now sings Buddhist sutras. What made him join the band?
I actually converted to Buddhism after I joined the band. I studied Buddhism just kind of on my own before. Just kind of curious about it after moving to Taiwan. And then prior to that, I was, partying a lot. Just kind of driving myself nuts with work and having kind of a rough lifestyle. And the band came along, and it's almost like the universe was telling me something like, hey, buddy, this thing you're looking for, this is it.
Dharma performs Buddhist sutras, but there's certainly no monks. So how do they make their music authentic? They turn to Buddhist masters to teach them the correct way to perform the sutras. And they even invited one to join the group, Master Melbourne.
因为达摩乐队他演唱的内容都是佛教的经咒，这个是最重要的一个加入的动机。还有就是，我觉得他们很特殊啊，就以现在的弘法的角度来讲，出奇制胜很重要啊，因为你要在同中求异啊。那我就看到哇，这个是佛教团体没有人做过的。
Dharma performed at this year's Megaport Festival, their second time at the event. Henley says the turnout for their last show was already impressive, but the expectations are even higher this time around.
They bumped us up to the Kaohsiung Music Center this year, so potentially, could have a few thousand people coming to watch us. So that's both awesome and terrifying.
It was a blast. Thousands of people indeed showed up for the show. It was like a massive Buddha ceremony. This is a scene you can see nowhere else in Taiwan and maybe in the world. Next, Dharma is heading on a European tour this summer, taking their heavy metal sutras to the world stage. Klein Wang, Kamashi, and Ivan Yang for TaiwanPlus.
Motorcycles are a common sight across Taiwan. To most commuters, it's all about convenience. But there is a group of enthusiasts who use their bikes to make a statement. Yu Jinghuang went to Taiwan's first motorcycle building competition to see how the bikes mirror their owners' personalities.
Artfully painted with streaks of rust red, with parts of its frame replaced with pieces of old furniture. This cream-colored bike is all about that 1920s look. Also on display, a bike with a custom-made bullet-shaped shroud. This style of bike is called a cafe racer, popular in the UK in the 50s. They were built to look good and go fast, and were often used in street races. Unusual bikes like these can be seen everywhere at the first Speed and Craft, Taiwan Championship of Custom Bike Building.
包含我们布置的方式，包含我们呈现的方式，都是希望你抛下你对它就是一台摩托车的这样的成见，而去把它当作是一个每一个人的心血结晶，一个工艺品去看待的。
The event isn't just for enthusiasts to share their techniques. It's open to everybody. as the organizer hopes to use it to introduce the artistic side of motorcycles to a wider audience.
The bike building competition has 2 categories. There are motorcycles built for road racing, like this one, and then ones built purely for style. But they're all made to reflect the personalities of their designers.
This sport motorcycle's custom design is all about the comfort of its rider. It's taller than normal to suit the owner's height. It's also got an extra large gas tank, so he doesn't have to stop for gas as often. Plus, strengthened shock absorbers make longer rides less bumpy.
我很喜欢骑车，所以我觉得这台车很明显看起来就是针对骑车这件事情去做的改装，对，所以一种奔放自由的感觉吧。很喜欢自由，很喜欢去探险、去冒险这件事情。我觉得这可以代表我这个人这样子。
This bike, in the competition's craft category, only preserves the original engine and the frame underneath. Its designer prefers an elegant look, so he hid the battery and part of the exhaust pipes, giving the exposed parts a more flowing, streamlined look.
那我想要做一台至少在台湾没有人看过是这样子做的车子的方式，然后比较精致，然后比较多细节，但是我又想要它看起来很简洁，对，所以颜色啊，然后设计方面都要很整齐这样子。
Although Taiwan is known for its massive number of two-wheeled vehicles, most of them are scooters. Motorcyclists are often seen as reckless in their pursuit of speed. With this event, these passionate riders hope to give the public a different perspective. That their motorbikes and modifications are just another form of self-expression. Kamashi and Eugene Huang for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching Taiwan Plus News. I'm Erika Liu. Take care and see you next time.